everyone, I'm Ashlee Edwards, and I am a senior product researcher at Netflix. I work in the globalization and accessibility spaces, and today I'll be talking to you about some challenges and potential solutions to creating a seamless localized product experience. Let's get started. So with more time at home, especially as various lockdowns have happened as a result of the pandemic, people around the world are spending more time consuming video content. Entertainment and streaming services have thus assumed a much bigger role in people's lives. However, as more people around the world are using these services, there's a need to create and support an experience that feels comfortable and is easy to use for people around the world. So once we have this global audience, we need to think about localization solutions that create a seamless product experience. So this talk will cover some challenges people face navigating video services, including streaming and consuming content in different languages, a framework for thinking about these challenges, some potential solutions because the problem hasn't been solved yet, and also some considerations for conducting global research and really getting out of an English first perspective. So first, let's diagram the problem. If we have entertainment and language, the interaction of these represents the experience of the member in the case of streaming services or the user more broadly for video services. And entertainment itself is a specific context. It's different from other contexts. So if you think about being entertained, you're in a much different frame of mind than when you go shopping, when you're trying to figure out where to travel to once things open up again, or really any other context that you're in. I think entertainment is, you're in a particular frame of mind that is different. Thus, the considerations for entertainment are different than many other contexts. And we'll talk about a few of those. So entertainment is often, a context where people are relaxed. But in this relaxed sort of state of mind, people are in different modes of searching and browsing. So these modes can be termed lean back versus lean forward. And by lean back, I mean a more sort of passive consumption state. This often results in sort of people wanting to just get something to watch that's very quick. And lean forward modes where the person is more actively engaged. They want to catch every word of the program. They don't want to miss anything. And the content needs in each of these modes are different. So I've sort of gathered together what I'm terming the ABCDs of entertainment contexts. And that's attention, background, content, and discovery. These factors affect each other and of course ultimately influence the type of content that someone ends up choosing. So attention and focus affect content, but also discovery. With attention, again, in this lean back versus lean forward dichotomy, are you paying close attention to the program, or is it more something that you want to put on in the background? Things that might be on in the background in terms of content are much more feel-good things, again, that don't require a lot of focus, you don't have to really be listening to, versus things that require close attention. And this also affects how hard people try to find this content. So if it's something that you just want on in the background, you may pick something very quickly. You may not be too invested in your choice versus something that you're going to sit down and devote a few hours to watching. Similarly, background and environment also factor very heavily into content decisions. So when we say background, we're thinking who's in the room watching, what's your environment like? If you're watching as a family, you're definitely going to choose much different content, i.e. probably more kid-friendly content than you would choose if you were watching by yourself. Also, environment, when we think of environment, we also mean devices. So what are you going to watch sort of sitting in front of the TV where you can kind of stretch out in your couch versus if you're looking at a mobile phone, you might be commuting, you might be sort of in your room looking up at the phone like this, you might be watching on a computer. That affects what choices you make with regards to content as well. So content types and availability is often the biggest factor in folks deciding what to watch. And when we say content types, we're referring to things like different genres. So horror, mystery, sci-fi, romance. In addition to content types, availability is also an important factor when people make decisions about entertainment. So they look at the depth and breadth perceptions of the catalog. How much content is there available on this video or streaming service? Is there a lot in the particular genre that I like? Is there a lot in general, or do they not have, the latest stuff? Members, or even sort of people who are watching free video services like YouTube, often make judgments about, here's how much is available to me that I then have to sift through. In addition, family-friendly content, again, also comes up as an important factor, because if you are in a context where you're watching a lot with your kids, especially at home, it's important for streaming services to have depth and breadth of this family-friendly content as well. So supporting all content discovery modes is important. Cheer audiences are very, very familiar with the searching and browsing dichotomy, and different types of searching and browsing even, but there's also serendipitous discovery to think about. So with searching and browsing, when we think of searching, it's a very high intent search. People know what they want. They're looking for it very directly. They may type in query terms that are exactly what they need, versus browsing is much more of a lean back. I'm kind of just looking around to see what's there, discovery mode. There's also serendipitous discovery, meaning, do I just want to sort of stumble upon something that I'm not necessarily looking for, but I think is really a gem? The third thing that is often a factor in entertainment context on streaming services in particular is at-a-glance discovery, meaning when I land on the streaming service, can I just look at something and make a quick decision about watching it right away? In Netflix and on Amazon and other streaming services, often when people land into the service, there is a piece of content already featured at the top. And so that content can change, and putting content there, does that help people make more effective decisions on, I want to watch that? Or having sort of a canvas where people don't have to do anything, whether it is type in search queries or try browsing, does that make decisions much easier for folks? Or would people prefer to do more active searching and slightly less active, but still discovery mode browsing? And this, of course, is not just limited to searching. People want to serendipitously discover lots of things and are looking for recommendations from all sorts of services, not just streaming, if you think about the shopping or travel context. Yeah, a lot of times advertisements play a role in this, but yeah, it's not just limited to streaming contexts. So we're back to our problem diagram. In entertainment, we know attention, who's watching with you, who's in the background, and what device you're watching is important. What type of content you're looking at, and also discovery modes you're in is very important. The second piece of this is language. Language is very multi-layered and often deeply personal, in that one person's language needs, fluency, et cetera, can like vary very highly from another person's, but it can also have implications for group contexts. And when I say language is multi-layered, I mean that language fluency is not sort of a binary decision, i.e. are you fluent or not? Lots of other things come into play there in terms of reading and writing fluency, speaking fluency, and we'll be talking some more about these things very soon. So the major considerations for language contexts are reading and writing versus speaking and listening. Again, that's fluency. Literacy levels also plays, of course, a factor in fluency. Co-watching, which is similar to the background environment in the entertainment context, and language learning. So reading versus speaking preferences for language can be very different. And I always bring myself up as an example. I can speak and listen to French and understand it quite clearly, but when I'm writing, I always forget my accent aigus or my accent graves. And my written communication in French is not as sharp as my speaking and listening. In addition to that, people may just prefer to read a different language than they want to listen to. The lean back versus lean forward dichotomy again comes into play here. If we're leaned in and we're very focused and we have sort of a high attention state, that might be a state in which we don't mind reading or writing and might actually prefer it, versus if we're leaning back, we're very casual, we're trying to relax, we may prefer a speaking and listening sort of language, and that those two may be different. Additionally, literacy levels is important to consider when we think about language context. So fluency doesn't always mean, reading and writing capability, as I brought up with my earlier point. And in particular, when we think about global audiences and things like subtitles, literacy does play a role in what we want to offer. So when we think about whether we're offering subtitles or more audio languages, we need to consider what the literacy levels are in the population that we are providing services to. So that's an important factor to remember as well. In addition to sort of watch modes, there are also language modes. So I bring up co-watching again here because it's like, what languages do your co-watchers speak? Meaning, if you're in a household, and let's say I speak French and English, but I live with someone who speaks German and English or German, Hungarian and English, what language will we end up watching in? Separately, language learning is also an important context that people leverage entertainment for frequently. So in addition to using language apps, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, like Duolingo and other apps to improve your language skills, people want to hear their sort of language of choice, and that helps them improve their listening and speaking. And how do we support this in the product? Should we support language learning in the product? That's something, again, we'll talk about more, but that is a mode that people often consume entertainment in. So when we think about the language considerations, we've got reading versus speaking, literacy, co-watching, and language learning. Now, when these two sort of contexts combine, again, entertainment and language, we've got experience. And we get a number of challenges that arise out of the combination of these two. So some challenges are around content discovery, how people navigate the service, subtitles versus dubs, multilingual households, as I just brought up with the French and the German example, accessibility, and language learning, again, as a potential challenge. So the content discovery problem that people often have with streaming services is that they need to find entertainment in their language. So for example, let's take Netflix. I typed in the query French movies and a list of movies pops up, but I'm not sure whether these movies are contain French subtitles, French audio or dubs, or if they're like French original language. I'm not really sure what I'm looking at here. And I have to scroll all the way to the bottom to see options to sort of narrow my search down. And even in the bottom, we've got French language movies and TV. And I'm still not sure if I want to find movies that have French subtitles or French dubs. I'm not sure where to look here. I have to kind of still click in further to really understand that. Separately, thinking about English-centric approaches to search, i.e. querying expectations of results and how they are presented, might make the experience worse. When we think about supporting languages that aren't necessarily, that don't have Roman characters, so for example, Arabic, that is written in right to left, some of the queries in Arabic in other services like Amazon and Hulu don't always bring up the same results as the English queries. Separately, when we think about, for example, some markets in Asia and some streaming services and search services there, they're designed to support a combination of different types of terms. So in addition to something like French movies, they might also support French movies that have a similar title to, for example, I'm Not an Easy Man. So how do we support this, which is sort of a non-typical approach to querying within the product? Separately, navigation might present challenges in terms of thinking about a US view of things. So we are looking at here, like, what are established interaction patterns around the world? How do we support these in the product? And helping people make sense of things like row names and categories, particularly on streaming services. So this example is taken from Amazon. And these are both IMDb related rows. One's on Amazon UK and one's on Amazon US. And they're completely different. And actually, when we look at sort of television shows versus series in many services, including Netflix, that's present in the top level navigation and doesn't always sort of allow folks to navigate to what they want. Because television shows calls to mind for many people what we term quote unquote linear TV, i.e. TV that is sort of on broadcast, that's not paid for, that's not streaming. And so when people see television shows on services like Netflix, they're like, hey, I'm confused. I thought I was paying for a sort of streaming service that would have series on them. So something for us to think about. Separately, subs and dubs, i.e. subtitles and dubs, which should we show people in the product? Well, it really depends on a few things, on their preferences and also their literacy levels. Tradition and history and market is also a factor. So if there has been a history of, for example, linear TV or broadcast TV being subtitled and films being dubbed, streaming services have a challenge there to either replicate that or disrupt that. Streaming services have both, of course, television shows and television series, pardon me, and also films. So should we continue to support that dichotomy of having one subtitled and the other dubbed? Or should we just offer people a choice for everything? And how discoverable are those choices for people? Additionally, how do people tell us which one they want? Do they need to go in and turn the settings on every single time for every title? Do they make an account level setting? Do they make a device level setting? Again, when we think about entertainment context, so there's a lot to consider here. Additionally, multilingual households, as I've mentioned, is a very complex watching context. So this is when people who speak or are learning multiple languages in a household watch content together. And this presents some challenges in the product, in particular, which should we have turned on at once and how we learn into these preferences. So when we're searching for content, let's say that I want to search for 24 days that it has both English and French subtitles, or both English and German both English and German subtitles. How do I type those into the search box such that I get those relevant results? Separately, when we think about separating profiles, meaning like when one person has a profile in a streaming service and another, like which languages should be made available per profile? Is it based on your watching history? Is it based on what's completely available in the product, or what we think you want to see? Like which should be surfaced to you first? Also, language consumption, again, which are you watching in most often? And if you're watching with another person, are you all always watching the same combinations? Are they changing? How do we support multiple needs and also shifting needs within one household or within one profile or account? Accessibility can be thought of as a kind of a different kind of language need. And in here, I'm particularly referring to subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, which are subtitles that add an additional level of information beyond regular subs. So it's a subtitle that might have like door closing, for example. An audio description is what quote unquote an audiobook of the show. So it gives additional information above the dialogue. If someone walks into the room in a piece of content, then the audio description would say, a man walks into the room. So it gives you kind of, again, an audiobook of the show. The example that I have highlighted here is from BBC iPlayer, and they have a signer available for people who are deaf to watch in addition to subtitles, but they have this option here, which is helpful to people who don't necessarily want to move their eyes back and forth, looking up from the speaker to the subtitle below. It reduces some of the visual load on folks who are deaf from constantly having to flip between those. And they're still able to enjoy the content because the person signing is sort of right at the same level as the focus of the program, and they're able to read the sign language. So language learning is an untapped entertainment use case. And we know that people are already learning languages via other apps like Duolingo, Busuu. But as I said earlier, entertainment is often a place where people look to brush up or hone their language skills. And so when they are working on these, they need both audio and text-based language support. So that means that they may have both French audio and French subtitles turned on at the same time. And we can support this as a use case, but should we think about offering additional language learning support in the product? So this might look like definitions. This might look like being able to look up words. We know that people are already using entertainment for this reason, so should we enhance what we have in order to support this use case? So what's the answer for a global product? What should we do? Well, one answer is personalized interfaces. We can learn into people's settings and behavioral patterns and adjust the experience accordingly. We could also, support multiple needs in one interface. So we can keep bilingual subtitles on. If we know that you like to watch in both English and Spanish, let's surface both. And you can turn one off for the other as you need. However, the challenge with this is looking at how adaptable or mutable this interface is, i.e., how often should it change? If it changes too often, it may unseat the user or member, make them feel as though they don't really know what's going on, and create a less than optimal experience. Additionally, should some inputs be prioritized over other ones? So, for example, if I think that you want to watch French more often, and I see that you have turned on French subtitles 3 times, is that the highest threshold for keeping that as a default setting? Versus if you've watched with English, many, many more times, which one should we prioritize? Should we change to offer French, or should we keep your experience consistent until we reach a certain threshold of input? Additionally, there are some market-specific considerations that we could build into the experience to really support a localized product experience. So supporting very specific searching and browsing use cases, looking towards like established norms in the market, and trying to avoid a fragmented product experience. So take a look at the Hulu example. So we have Hulu US on the left, and we talk a little bit about the content on Hulu. They show you sort of a tiny preview, but it really moves into the plan selection. And there's a lot of descriptions about the types of screens that you get, the types of free trials, what you can watch, no ads. So when you first sort of land on this Hulu page, it's really, really heavily focused on the price and what you get for the price. Contrast this with Hulu Japan, which is on the right. I can't read Japanese, but they start off with a little bit of discussion of price, but they very quickly move into content. You're able to actually see all of the rows of content on Hulu. Well, not all, but you are able to see a decent selection and even flip through some of the rows and take a look at what content is there. So we have sort of very different foci here. And if you think about it too, the density of information presented on Hulu Japan's sort of homepage versus Hulu US is very, very different. There's a lot more content and a lot more information on titles on Hulu Japan than Hulu US. Ooh. So when thinking about how to do research for a global audience, again, in order to continue to identify improvements for this, there are 3 things that I usually engage with in order to move away from a US and Western centric approach. So I do a local first approach with folks that I work with in markets when I do this research. I co-create with my moderators. So I start off by asking them or letting them know about some of our research goals. I ask them questions on the context in the market, and then they write the interview guide in their native language first and have it translated into English. That way, when we actually go and do the research in the market, the questions are natively authored. And so we avoid some of this Western bias in the way that we ask things, and also different frames of reference. The second thing I do is cultural context gathering. Again, I meet with moderators to really understand, hey, what's going on with the entertainment landscape in this market? What should I know? Are there any particular idiosyncrasies? And even while the research is happening, and say, hey, so, people are mentioning this. Can you tell me a little bit more about that or what that means? So continuously sort of gathering cultural context, and also thinking about analogous experiences, again, regionally. So something that, I myself have even felt anecdotally is, that sometimes looking through Netflix can feel like digging through, the DVD bin at Walmart. And Walmart is, an American sort of store, catch-all store that has a lot of different things, but they have these DVD bins where you can look through and pick one out, and they're usually discounted. But the feeling there is, hey, I can't find anything on Netflix. It takes me a long time to look through things that I don't feel are relevant to find something that I want to watch. So when I go into international markets, I'm looking for these experiences that feel analogous to what people are looking for on Netflix so that we can incorporate some of these approaches when we think about how to improve the experience. That's it for me. I won't be taking questions since this is a recording, but I hope you enjoyed the talk, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.